As the honorary president of WHISC, Women in the Holocaust International Study Center, located at Givat Haviva in Israel, it is an honor for me to greet all of you in Belgrade who are participating in our first international conference on women in the Holocaust. This is not, of course, the first conference ever held on this topic, but it is our first conference. And so I want to thank everyone who worked so hard to organize it. I also want to thank all of you who traveled to Belgrade to participate in it, and regret I am not able to be with you in person. What I have to say is not new, so please consider my comments merely a modest introduction to the importance of our overall conference topic, Women in the Holocaust. What I want to highlight is how women, survivors and scholars, have helped to shape Holocaust history and memory. Women and gender in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The subject of women in the Holocaust was not high on the agenda of scholars researching and writing about the Holocaust, but it did attract feminist scholars of German history and culture, whose intellectual interest led them to investigate the daily lives of women during the Nazi era, World War II, and the Holocaust. One such scholar was Joan Ringelheim, an American Jewish philosopher, university teacher, and later in her professional career, director of oral history at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. Joan Ringelheim is widely recognized as a pioneer in the field of research about women in the Holocaust. She had this to say about the historical past. What is identified as the historical past has been shaped, reconstructed, and muted to serve various scholarly and political interests. While written history is continually reconstructed, portions of the past wait to be revealed. These simple observations present us with a set of questions and problems. Whose memory will be respected? Whose memory will be hidden or undermined? What will be considered the truth? Who will decide? Who controls the identity of the past? In other words, since decisions are always being made about what will be emphasized in history as written, we must ask, was that all there was? Men have been the central figures in the narration of history, including Holocaust history, whether as writers and interpreters of history or as agents of change. Survivors and scholars like Viktor Frankl, Primo Levi, Elie Wiesel, Yehuda Bauer, Raoul Hilberg, David Bankier, Dan Michman, Franklin Littell, Christopher Browning, Daniel Jonah Goldhagen, and Robert J. Lifton, to name a few of the many widely known male writers and scholars of the Holocaust, shaped and influenced Holocaust history and memory. By and large, these male scholars had nothing to say about the fate of women during the Holocaust, not out of meanness or contempt, but probably as the result of their cultural views about women, their views about the relative unimportance of gender during the Holocaust, and the significance of Jewishness in the Nazi worldview. For them and for other scholars, Jewishness was the primary factor that elicited Nazi brutality, overriding all other victim characteristics. But was that all there was? The memoirs and scholarly volumes of many of the male scholars and survivors I just mentioned gained a wide audience, and rightly so. But in the 1970s and 80s, feminist scholars began to ask about women as writers and interpreters of history, as agents of change. Scholars like Joan Ringelheim, Marian Kaplan, Sybil Milton, Claudia Kuntz, Myrna Goldenberg, Dahlia Ofer, Lenore Weitzman, and Atina Grossman, to name just a few female scholars, began to explore the impact of gender on victimization during the Holocaust. They drew attention to the fact that the experience of men did not represent the universal experience of the Holocaust. They argued that the reflection and historical interpretation of men was not all there was, and predominantly taking into account the experiences and views of men gives an incomplete picture. One cannot grasp the significance of the Nazi exterminatory effort if the experiences of women are overlooked, if their reflections and historical interpretations are not considered on the same level as that of men. There were, however, a few female scholars like Cynthia Ozick, an American Jewish writer but not a Holocaust survivor, and Vera Laska, a non-Jewish historian and a survivor of Auschwitz, who argued that studying differences between how men and women suffered during the Holocaust could trivialize the event. Let me be clear, there is no doubt that to have been born a Jew in Germany or in German-occupied Europe was deadly dangerous during the Nazi-era, World War II, and the Holocaust. But other factors also elicited Nazi brutality. One that mattered was gender, that marker of biological sex and set of cultural practices and beliefs aimed at organizing relations of power between the sexes. Different voices, women in the Holocaust. Now, I confess, I probably wasn't thinking about gender and its presence or absence in interpreting the behavior and experiences of Holocaust victims when nearly 35 years ago, I received a copy of Michael Berenbaum and John K. Roth's book, Holocaust, Religious and Philosophical Implications. It reprinted what Berenbaum and Roth called classic Holocaust reflections by influential writers. Its contents were male-dominated. I knew there had been significant work done by female scholars and survivors about the Holocaust. I was thinking, for example, about the work of women like Hannah Arendt, or Charlotte Delbo and Sybil Milton, Helen Fine and Dorothy Zola, Pelagia Lewinska, Marian Kaplan, and Gisela Pearl, among others. Consequently, I asked John Roth, where are the women? That question prompted a number of discussions between us, with the result that we decided to work together on a book. Different Voices, Women During the Holocaust was the result of our collective effort to respond to my original question, where are the women? What we discovered as we tried to answer that question was that women were everywhere before the Holocaust, during the Holocaust, and after the Holocaust. They were reflecting on their experiences, telling their stories, trying to help the rest of us come to terms with the horrors of the Nazi Third Reich and the Holocaust. They were in ghettos and in hiding. They were in resistance units, concentration camps, and killing centers. Women were present in the Nazi sphere of influence. Women served in German offices and in concentration and death camps. Women made homes that served as havens for the men who did the dirty, rotten killing work required of them as they carried out their Nazi oath of loyalty. Women's active or passive complicity facilitated and legitimated the process of destruction that annihilated millions. In Different Voices, John and I tried to explore the question, how do the particularities of women's experiences during the Holocaust compare and contrast with those of men? We tried to build on the work of scholars like Joan Ringelheim, Sybil Milton, Gisela Bach, Marian Kaplan, Claudia Kuntz, and Charlotte Delbo, among others. What they tried to do was add to the general knowledge about both the Holocaust and women's experiences during the period, identifying and understanding the response of Jewish women to this catastrophe, their coping strategies, if any, and their specific vulnerabilities as women. Gita Serini's book, Albert Speer, His Battle with Truth, not specifically about women during the Holocaust and the Nazi Third Reich, reveals that women married to the men who surrounded Hitler and who helped to plan and implement the final solution of the Jewish question, avoided asking their spouses questions about what they knew and did during the years of the Nazi Third Reich. In their own way, these women who socialized and had discussions over cocktails and around the dinner table with Hitler and his co-conspirators, refused to discuss anything beyond family, films, weather, and other safe topics. They contributed in their own way to creating a culture of silence and avoidance that helped to make the Holocaust possible. Other non-Jewish German women were winning medals for producing children for the Fuhrer. These so-called Aryan women were valued by Hitler and the Nazis for their fertility, for their ability to breed children. Birth control and abortions were not available to them. Depending on the number of children a German woman produced, she received a bronze, silver, or gold medal from the Fuhrer. The front of the medal said, Den deutschen Mutter, the German mother. If she wore her medal to the ration store, she automatically went to the front of the line. If she wore it to the cinema, she was admitted free. Just as Nazi men tried to persuade these German women that no duty was more important than that of bearing sons for the Third Reich, these same men insisted with a vengeance that the possibility of Jewish motherhood must be eradicated forever. Men and women were subjected to similar kinds of torment in the ghettos and camps: filth, starvation, forced labor, humiliation, deportation, death. But only women were tormented by pregnancy, amenorrhea, abortion, invasive gynecological examinations, lewd verbal sexual humiliation, although one could argue on this last point that homosexuals also were tormented by sexual humiliation. Women were terrorized by the sexual manner of certain forms of torture: rape, forced prostitution, forced abortion, and other forms of molestation and experimentation. An issue John and I did not look at very closely in Different Voices was that of sexual violence during the Holocaust, although we did not totally ignore it. Still, we should have paid more attention to it. In the early years after the Holocaust, women themselves, both Jewish women and non-Jewish women, were reluctant to talk about sexual abuse they experienced during the Holocaust and after the liberation of the camps. They were shy about drawing attention to individual rape, to mass rapes, and to unwanted pregnancies. Here's what Joan Ringelheim said about that. The impulse to neutralize the issue of sex by treating it as non-existent or insignificant is entirely understandable. The possible rape of mothers, grandmothers, sisters, friends, or lovers during the Holocaust is difficult to face. The possibility that mothers or sisters or lovers voluntarily use sex to procure food or protection is equally difficult to absorb, if not more so. Experiences connected with sex, whether negative or positive, are understandably troublesome. But if we dismiss situations that relate so specifically to women, it is well nigh impossible to understand the victimization of women and really see Jewish women as victims. When John and I published Different Voices in 1993, sexual violence during the Holocaust was still part of war's dirty secret, still part of matters too tough to talk about, still shameful for victims to mention because of social, cultural, and religious taboos. But after the genocides in former Yugoslavia and Rwanda in the 1990s, including the widespread sexual violence brought to our attention by the media, the subject of sexual violence during the war and genocide began to receive the attention it deserved. Women who had been horribly violated, subjected to rampant sexual violence, overwhelmingly inflicted by men during those genocides, began to speak freely about what they endured. It freed up women who had survived the Holocaust to speak about what they too had endured at the hands of men before, during, and after the Nazi era, World War II, and the Holocaust. The past 20 years have seen an increasing number of essays and books about sexual violence written by scholars, international jurists, and human rights activists, by victims themselves, Rochelle Seidel and Sonia Hedgepeth's volume, Sexual Violence Against Jewish Women During the Holocaust, is an important anthology about sexual violence. Essays in their book describe experiences of forced sex, sex for survival, prostitution, sterilization, abortion, and general sexual humiliation. And they add greatly to what is known about the lives of Jewish women during the Third Reich. The essays in Sexual Violence Against Jewish Women During the Holocaust illustrate how this subject is discussed or not across the globe. Of course, one cannot say that every woman showed strength in the face of Nazis' humiliation and persecution. Nor can one say that every woman adjusted with courage and dignity to the harsh conditions of the ghettos and camps, but many did. When men were rounded up for deportation, women were forced to fulfill the traditional role of head of the family. They were the ones who had to assume full responsibility for their family, holding them together as best they could, eking out whatever meager living, if any, they could manage. It was women, wives, and mothers who had to sew the yellow stars on their families' clothing, explain to their children the humiliating significance of that label. Reading women's narratives about the Holocaust, it is clear they often include a variety of gender-specific behaviors and attitudes. For example, women's domestic instinct to cook and provide scarce food for their children and family members, their custom of serving their family before eating themselves if they ate at all. Approximately 10% of the guards at concentration and death camps were women, some of them infamous for their cruelty. Perhaps you've asked yourself the question, does atrocity have a gender? 20 years ago, Susanna Heschel asked herself that question. She noted that studies such as Christopher Browning's Ordinary Men focused on the motives of male perpetrators, while women have been studied almost entirely as victims. Did survivors and scholars stereotype women during the Holocaust as nurturers, neglecting to study ordinary women and their capacity for violence? Is more research needed about women who during the Holocaust adopted male proclivities toward violence? Finally, what about rescuers? Many of you may know Irena Steinfeld, the former director of the Department of the Righteous at Yad Vashem. There is no PhD after her name, no long list of peer-reviewed essays in scholarly publications. But Irena Steinfeld spent many years poring over rescue accounts during the years she headed the Department of the Righteous at Yad Vashem. So she knows a thing or two about rescuers during the Holocaust, both male and female. In a presentation she gave at the 2018 Women, the Holocaust, and Genocide Conference at Seton Hill University in the USA, Irena Steinfeld said she was unable to identify clear gender differences among rescuers. Perhaps some of you have identified such differences, but she has not been able to. Questions about who, male or female, was able to muster enormous courage and what made them act against the accepted norms of their society have no easy answers. Human nature, she said, is complex, something I suspect we all know. Still, allow me to draw attention to one woman, Magda Trocmé, the wife of the Protestant pastor of La Chambon, André Trocmé. Her story is in different voices. Resistance in La Chambon to the Germans and the collaborationist French Vichy government began with small gestures, with Magda opening her door and welcoming a German Jewish woman into her home. She considered her act of welcome as something natural, as the right thing to do. Magda Trocmé was a mother with 4 children and a husband to care for. She was not a feminist. They hardly existed in her village. She was just an ordinary woman among other ordinary men and women in a remote mountain village. But little by little, helping refugees who came to their village during the years of Nazi terror spread among the people of La Chambon and outward to other mountain villages. As she said, none of us thought we were heroes. We were just people trying to do our best. Maud de Trocmé and others in La Chambon possessed the qualities of heart and spirit that enabled them to welcome the stranger, feed the hungry, shelter the homeless, resist the oppressor, and to stand with those whose lives literally depended on them. These are neither feminine nor masculine qualities. They're human qualities that all of us should try to develop and make real in our lives, whether we are women or men. In different voices, Women in the Holocaust, John, Roth, and I tried to draw attention to the particularity of women's experience during the Holocaust. Not because we thought women's voices were clearer or better than men's, not because we thought women endured their suffering in a manner superior to that of men, but because we wanted women to speak for themselves. We wanted to allow women's memories and scholarship to illuminate the history and memory of the Holocaust. And in doing so, we wanted to learn more about how both women and men endured the Holocaust in the ghettos and forests, in the camps and in hiding, in all the places and ways women were present during the Holocaust. We wanted the experiences and the reflections of women, their scholarship and questions, to become as familiar to us as that of their more widely published male counterparts. We wanted to rescue the voices of women during the Holocaust so that all of us could hear them and learn from them. In the end, all Jews were equally destined for death, but there were differences on the road to that destination for men and women. Hence, an analysis of gender-based distinctions in Holocaust experiences and the ways in which they have been narrated by female and male survivors and scholars adds an important angle to our knowledge and understanding of this dark chapter in modern history. We need the lens of gender to help us to interpret the behavior and experiences of victims, perpetrators, resistors, rescuers, even bystanders during the Holocaust. Women's experiences as specifically female and men's experiences as specifically male are significant to our understanding of the Holocaust, of genocide generally. As the honorary president of WHISC, Women in the Holocaust International Study Center, I thank all of you for the important scholarly work you are doing about women in the Holocaust. May you continue to produce significant scholarship, and may every one of you go from strength to strength as you continue your important work.